In 2018, myself and a good friend Sebastian, we rode for 8 days, just went to put our toes in the water, just to see what it was like. And it was just so amazing that we were like, wow, we have to share this with people. We have to let people know.
Shane Eedes, better known as Lukhanyo here on the Wild Coast, runs a guided horse trail from Morgan's Bay to Port Edward and back again. That's the entire Wild Coast twice. It's about 800 kilometers and it takes about 2 months, but he breaks it into shorter 10-night trails for those who are into this sort of thing. It's not for the faint-hearted. This is the Wild Coast.
People always compliment this herd and say, wow, they can't believe how this herd operates and how they don't kick and how they don't bite. We practice a style of natural horsemanship where we don't put bits in their mouths. It's more about asking them to do things rather than forcing them to do things. We don't break them in, we back them. It's a much gentler way of asking them to be ridden rather than forcing them to be ridden.
I saw Mark's footage of, I think it was his footage of you crossing
the Umtentu Harbour last year. Yeah.
It was quite hectic, yeah?
Yeah, there was quite a crossing last year, the Umtentu Harbour. I actually nearly drowned in the Umtentu Harbour last year. Not on the horses, I went a day before to go and see, because the floods were in the north part of the Wild Coast last year. And I went on foot to go and see where we could cross. And somebody had told me that you could cross at the river mouth if the ocean's calm, and I tried at the river mouth and I nearly drowned. Luckily my friend was there to pull me out the and the xhosas say, or the mpondo say, that there's a massive octopus, and they call it Ngwanya, who lives in that river mouth, and he holds your feet and you cannot move. So that was very scary. So they don't call it the Wild Coast for nothing. It's for every reason, as I said many times. Like, the rivers are wild, the shipwrecks out there are crazy, the rivers can be massive. It's been wild with the orcas. We've seen orcas, we've seen so many dolphins and whales, and the vultures and fish eagles, and just you name it. It's just been amazingly beautiful. Yeah, it's been a really, really special ride. There's very few places in the world where you're going to find a land that is so preserved, and it's huge respect to the people who live on this land right now and to their ancestors for keeping it like this. When I'm here, I feel that God is in everything and all around me. When I'm in the city, yes, God is there, but it's so much harder to see him in concrete and glass buildings and tar roads and cars. In the general open spaces, the common land, the people's land, there's no fences, and that means a lot. There's community, people walk and graze and do things freely, and if you have your little homestead, you fence off your homestead, but your pathways are never blocked. That thing of Ubuntu, when you riding through the Wild Coast here and you see all the waterberries still growing, the num-nums that are still growing, you're not allowed to cut down fruit-bearing trees, because there needs to be sustenance for a traveller, a passerby, a herder who's going to look for his cattle. These customary laws are still adhered to, they're still looked after. People respect and look after their space in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way. One of the things when we do our prayer in the xhosa or in the Sangoma circles in our introduction is we call our ancestors, and I say I'm born of the Eedes family. My father's Leslie, he's born to Gladys and Christopher. My mother is Audrey, and she's born to Frederick and Anne. I had to actually find out what Anne's name was, I didn't know. But I've heard xhosa people, mpondo people go back 6 or 7 generations because they remember who they are. They are taught from really young who they are, you know. They're born of this land. It is so deeply ingrained in their inner core. They are not separate from the land, they are the land. When they're born, the placenta is buried in the house, in the cow dung floor, because you're born of the land. Nobody looks at themselves separately here, and I think we as Westerners, We were given dominion over land and earth, according to the Bible. And that's a really bad way to look at things. God gave us power to do what we wanted to the land and the earth. And that's it's quite a responsibility that was given to us, especially when we don't look after it. Because we don't look after it, we totally abuse it. And I'm just saddened when I hear of, for 20 years, this community has been fighting the prospects of titanium mining for an Australian company. And our ANC government wants to push this. They want it because why? Because there's money. And there's a huge divide in this community, the people who want the mining and the people who don't want the mining. They want to rip up 300 square kilometers of this pristine coastline, the red dunes, places where I've picked up stone tools from, I'm no scientist, but I've been told by the people walking with me and showing me these things, the stone tools that were used by Homo erectus. That's like 200 to 500,000 year old stone tools. And then they want to go mine it for titanium, for our cell phones. How disconnected are we as a human race? We try on this wild coast ride to stay in xhosa family homes and village-based accommodation and homestays, purely because you know that you're supporting families along the way. So this little ride, the accommodation bill up and down the wild coast over the few months, it's not huge. It's 160,000. But that 160,000, I try and put it as close to the people living here rather than into the bigger companies. So we choose community-run backpackers and accommodations, community. There's only one hotel we stay in, and that's because we almost have to. There's always this glitter and gold. Unfortunately, I've seen places on the wild coast that have become more tourist-orientated, and crime has increased, drugs have increased, alcohol's increased. And we always look at, and poverty has actually increased. And we always look at, oh, we're going to bring hotels, we're going to do this, we're going to change this. But we need these places in the world where life almost still stands still, and where the people who are standing still with the life and enjoying it appreciate it to the level that they do. And that's what scares me with the ideas of this Gwe Gwe development that's going up here, is that they want to put up an expensive 6-star hotel here in this beautiful Mkombati reserve, and they want to put fences around, and the people who need to walk from Umtentu and Dangani are going to have to walk around this fence, and it could be a 10-kilometer detour. So what would be a 16-kilometer walk is now going to become a 20-something kilometer walk, a 26-kilometer walk. And this path has been followed by people going from Umtentu to Ndangani, or Msikaba as is better known, for years, to go to clinics, to catch taxis, to get there. It's easier for people sometimes to walk from here to Ndangani than it is to catch taxis all the way around the Umtentu Gorge and the Msikaba Gorges. The people here welcome a beautiful 6-star resort, but do it taking the people's hearts and considerations and traditions into mind and respect. I think it's very important.
South Africa, we are Tilila. We are South Africa.
Stories are held in the song, and celebrations held in the song. And if you looked in that group last night, there was an 8-year-old child, and there was all ages up until a 40-year-old man dancing in the same space. And that 40-year-old man was teaching them below them the traditions, the way of the land. They were holding on to the prayer of the space. They want their ancestral land to be preserved. They want their home to be preserved. They want to not be removed from their land. They want their cattle to be able to graze freely here. But they also want to welcome the tourists in and show them how happy they are, how they love this land, how they've cared for this. Where in the world do you see that? You know, where in the world do you see this? And people living in harmony, not in disruption or disharmony with the land. Because most places people are living in disharmony with the land right now. And that needs respect. And I think that's what allures a lot of people. What allures people, not only the hippie. We've come from a society where we've had everything. I've come from a society where I've had fancy cars, went to the best schools, air-conditioned homes, all that kind of stuff. Some of the most unhappy people I know are the richest people I know. And some of the happiest people I know are the richest people I know. And they have a different richness, and their richness is a richness within, a richness with spirit, with community, with the land, connection with self.
Let's do a quick fact check. The developers of the lodge at Mkambati assure me that they're not putting up any new fences. There may be some new regulations, but mostly there's going to be tighter control of the existing regulations. People who want to pass through the reserve, they're going to have to book, they're going to have to pay a park entrance fee, and some access to some places may be restricted depending on the needs of the lodge guests. Shane's right that it may well end up being a longer hike. And it's not going to be a 6-star hotel. If it gets rated at all, it's going to be a 4.5 or a 5-star hotel. Either way, it's going to be very fancy. But you'll find out all about this stuff on the episode that focuses on the development, the developers, and their worldview. The Australian mining company MRC were not granted a license to mine here at Xolobeni, thanks to the efforts of local activists. And they never applied to mine 300 square kilometers. It was only about 30 square kilometers, but obviously that doesn't take into account the areas immediately around the mine that would be affected. The mining is not going away. There's still powerful people who want it to happen. And maybe they've got their eye on this entire stretch of coastline, which does amount to about 300 square kilometers. But more about that in another episode. Those stone tools that Shane found in the Red Dunes, according to archaeologist Marlies Lombard, belonged to early Homo sapiens who were here at least 250,000 years ago. Homo erectus were around about 1.5 million years ago. Either way, those tools are old, really old. I love Shane. He's inspiring, he's deeply spiritual, he's interesting, and he's damn good at what he does. I'd love to join him on a trail one day. It must be an unforgettable experience. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.